Oh, I haven't heard that.
Roger that, Roger. Allison said that the other day, and I was like, I should say that all the time.
Maybe that's why how it got, because I haven't said that in a long
It's
long
also like
time.
not even funny, but it somehow is funny. Like it doesn't really make sense.
It's funny if you like really love Airplane. Roger, Roger, Vector, Victor.
I threw in Vector, Victor there. Roger, huh?
And then, Airplane 2 was unnecessary, but still kind of funny.
There was one great visual joke in Airplane 2. Other than that, I completely agree with you. But when they were doing this sort of like, kind of like zoom up, isn't.
Oh, where does audio go?
Oh, what happened? Rob.
Rob, I think we just lost your audio.
Oh, no.
Oh, wait. No, there it goes. I think you have a loose cable. Oh, wait. No, I can't hear you.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was sort of weird. I just muted myself because I had to cough. It was like either really good timing or somehow I'm now controlling yours as well.
Correlation.
Try muting again because nothing changed over here. That was weird.
Okay. All right. Let me try to mute me again and see if I know.
I am talking. Can anybody hear me?
Fine.
No, she's fine.
Weird.
Merely correlation. Yeah, it really did sound like a cable was loose.
It did, yeah.
It came back in that sort of.
Well, if it were April 1, you would have to suspect that I'm messing with you, but it's not. So you shouldn't suspect that.
Does your cat frequent the top of your desk?
I have a dog, and she does not.
Oh, okay.
Does your dog frequent the top of your desk?
No, well, she might, but
something might be
gnawing
on the cable.
Here's Ashby the dog.
Hi, Ashby.
Wait, can you see her face there? Wait.
Yeah.
I'm getting it. Say hi, Ashby.
Hi, Ashby. Oh, she's so cute.
Oh,
she's a cutie.
Ashby's been with you guys for some time now.
Yeah, we go back. We've had Ashby for almost 9 years.
Wow.
That's a lot of Ashby. And she's a great member of our family.
Well, and I remember when Ashby first became part of your family, it was a little touch and go. She had to chill out a little bit.
Wait, okay, so your audio went out again, Rob. So I think
it's got to be a mic thing or a cable thing.
Right there. Say something, Rob.
Hello.
Oh yeah. Okay, so don't touch your microphone.
Wow, that's this blue icicle thing. It's so fancy. I won't touch it again. Anyway, yeah, Ashby has settled right in. I'm a rescue myself, so we are very loyal to our rescues around here.
Well, yeah. I also have 2 rescue cats. So I'm
Ray and Sawyer are rescue dogs.
Right.
Solidarity.
I have a rescue home. I don't know because this place needs...
I don't think that would work.
Yeah, it's got to be animate.
Yeah. Also, I don't think just buying a house makes it a rescue.
Oh.
Well, you're rescuing it from the worst couple who were going to
rescue
paint
implies
the walls a really bad color.
There's no other fate. This home will be torn down if no one buys it.
You never know. If I did rescue it.
All right. Are we ready to go?
Yeah. I'm ready.
All set.
Yeah. Hey there, Sarah Lane. You want to do the pre-roll?
Sure do.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay. All right.
3, 2.
Daily Tech News Show is powered by you. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Monday, April 2nd, 2018. From DTNS headquarters in Los Angeles, I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Feline, I'm Sarah Lane.
We have with us returning guest Rob Reid, author of After On and host of the After On podcast as well. Rob, good to have you back.
Great to be here.
I'm very happy that we have had a couple of years with April 1st on the weekend because it really is disruptive to the news flow. But, next year we'll be back at it. I actually really love April Fool's Day, but for a few years it became a bit much, I think.
Well, yeah. You just get used to, everything you read being like, what kind of a weird thing are they trying to do to, like, is this real or not?
Yeah,
it's just, it's exhausting if you actually have to work that day.
Our
I
producer,
got a little exhausted yesterday because Google Maps started inserting pictures of Waldo everywhere. And as it happened, I was in the middle of a bit of a map crisis when it happened.
no.
And just having that damn face pop in and wave every time we were trying to do our navigation was really pretty tiring.
Yeah. A lot of times people need navigation for very serious reasons.
Yes,
so
indeed.
Our producer, Roger Chang, is here as well. Roger, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
I'm glad to hear it. Although, are you telling the truth? I can't tell. Let's start with a few tech things you should know.
Sources tell Bloomberg's Ian King and Mark Gurman that Apple plans to use its own chips in Mac starting as early as 2020. Project Kalamata, which is a really good name for a project, as it's apparently called, aims to make all Apple devices work seamlessly together.
Is that because Kalamata olives have the seed inside, and this will have the seed of Apple's processor? Never mind.
Well,
Cloud.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll get back to that in the post show.
Cloudflare launched a consumer DNS service at 1.1.1.1 and 1.0.0.1. And yes, Cloudflare is aware that many of you use that as a garbage address, and they're willing to take that. No problem. Cloudflare also promises it will be the internet's fastest DNS, and the company will wipe all logs within 24 hours to ensure privacy. All right, let's talk a little bit more about Mark Zuckerberg's campaign of apology. This time, who's he talking to, Sarah?
Well, in an interview with Vox, CEO Mark Zuckerberg defended his company, claiming it makes decisions, quote, based on what's going to matter to our community. He also argued that he is among companies who work hard to change people less and make their product available to more than just the rich. Zuckerberg also used the word glib to describe Apple CEO Tim Cook's comment that Apple doesn't sell user data to advertisers. I'm not really sure why glib was the word that he used, but I guess it was the tone.
Well, yeah. I loved what he said after that, which is, and not at all aligned with the truth, which seemed to be a slightly polite way of saying lying.
Also kind of glib to say that.
Yes, it is kind of glib. It is kind of glib.
I really liked this article. It gave me the impression, and this could be an impression, right? You may not trust a word that comes out of the man's mouth, and that's fine. But if you take him as his word, it gave me the impression that Mark Zuckerberg acknowledges the problems with Facebook, that he wants Facebook to emphasize the quality of our interactions with people over everything else, over advertising, over time spent viewing. He's like, what will make Facebook successful will be the quality of people's interactions. We're doing a lot to emphasize that people get meaningful interactions, and we're doing research for that. And we want to make Facebook a really good place. What disappoints me is that he never acknowledges that one of the reasons I think, and maybe he just disagrees with me, maybe he's not going to acknowledge it. One of the reasons I think Facebook's in the position it is because it closes itself off. At one point, one example is in this article, he talks about maybe someday having a third-party review panel so people can appeal things that have been blocked. That if somebody complains about something and the Facebook staff blocks it, you could appeal outside of Facebook and say, hey, is this really... should this really be blocked? And to me, I'm like, yeah, that's what an open platform looks like. You have that happen naturally in an open platform. You're just trying to reinvent what you've walled yourself off from.
I think it would be really neat if the appeal route was to like a North Korean court. Would that be like so unexpected and kind of cool in a weird way?
No, I don't think that would be cool in any way, Rob.
But unexpected for sure.
Unexpected, I will go for. Interesting.
That much.
Yeah, definitely very interesting.
Also, the whole sort of like, hey, you know, we don't want to charge people a lot of money. Facebook is for, you know, not just the rich. Okay. But one could argue that, you know, people giving away their data in exchange for not being charged for things is more expensive in the long run as well. So, if you're going to compare Apple and Facebook, for example, it's like, well, okay, yeah, Facebook is not selling a bunch of hardware and Apple sells a lot of expensive hardware. But Apple also provides services that aren't always at a cost. Apple not selling user data, which is something that obviously Facebook has been accused of and is well aware of those problems. That to some people is worth more, even if it's not, you know, dollars coming out of your wallet. In the long run, it's potentially detrimental. So I think it's it's oversimplifying things to say we want the whole world to be on Facebook and we don't want to charge you, because there is some cost depending who you are.
Yeah, there is. And it's a good campaign speech. I mean, I don't think Mark Zuckerberg wants to run for president. I think he sees Facebook as a government. He basically says so in this interview, and he feels that he is acting as if he were a governmental leader and needs to act like one, which is why he goes out pseudo campaigning and meeting people and talking to them. Whether that changes down the road and he decides to run for actual public office, I don't know. But I think he has an inflated sense of what Facebook should be. CBRS is a spectrum that will be freed from exclusive military use in the U.S. this year. Google is leading a project to make private use of the spectrum without interference. Now, this would make wireless data cheaper to operate because carriers wouldn't have to own the spectrum. Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Comcast, and Charter are all testing CBRS and recommending manufacturers include support in future hardware. This would increase coverage possibilities as well, because even though if you live in an area with a lot of military activity, it might not work as well. In a lot of places, you don't have much military activity at all, and so it's just open spectrum.
Yeah, isn't it specifically the Navy? So I think landlocked states could be facing a bandwidth bonanza here because the Navy doesn't usually haul into, I don't know, South Dakota.
That's one of those things that I want to agree with you on, but I'm always hesitant to say it because as soon as I do, somebody writes in, it's like, well, actually, the Navy tests its planes in some landlocked area. But I think largely the point is well taken, which is, you know, in the middle of the country, you don't get a lot of Navy planes flying around. And if that's who makes the use of CBRS for the most part, then yeah. What is, I think, unarguable is there's a lot of unused spectrum in this space, and Google's trying to make a system that will make good use of it.
And it's 150 megahertz, right? I mean, it's a pretty
big
huge
slice,
chunk of spectrum.
Yeah, and what they're trying to do is make it smart so that if military use is happening, that gets prioritized. And then second would be somebody like Verizon who's like, oh, I'm going to use this network. And then there would be an open platform, it seems like, down below it.
And then squatters get no benefit. And so one of the things that the article noted was that if somebody has technically bought the spectrum, but they're not using it, they're just kind of sitting there, then lower priority people can actually use that spectrum as well. So it goes Navy official owner, and if official owner's not using it,
right
down to the next party, which is great.
Excuse me. The Wall Street Journal reports that as Amazon looks for its new second headquarters and is courting cities for that, it's asking cities that are in the running to provide SAT and ACT scores, you know, like high school students. When Amazon first announced its expanded headquarters search, it listed education as a very important factor in choosing the city. The company also said that its request for proposals that it would invest $5 billion over 10 years to creating its second headquarters in whatever city is ultimately chosen. The project also potentially means up to 50,000 new employees, or new jobs anyway. Okay, I guess.
I think it's an interesting insight into what Amazon's after, right? They want not just college educated. It looks like they're looking, because they're looking at SAT and ACT scores. They're like, what's the funnel into college? You know, what do you have a well-developed high school system that will feed these people in? I mean, they are very long-term thinkers.
At the same time, it also puts a lot of emphasis on certain tests that not everybody believes is the best indicator of like the new smart workforce that might work for Amazon. You know, it doesn't, I guess if you had a bunch of, you know, great SAT scores, you might say, oh yeah, good schools, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to help Amazon at some new headquarters. Although when you're looking at 50,000 potential new positions, I guess if you're Amazon and you're going to invest a lot of money into some new place, you want a workforce that has demonstrated that that education base is strong.
They should make the mayors take the SATs for each of these cities, I think, and also fill out maybe an essay test.
I wonder if they just have a huge amount of intern positions that they're looking to fill as soon as they ramp up.
No, they don't have 50,000 intern positions.
No, not 50,000.
I think they're mostly looking like, are we going to have an educated workforce local to this? And I think I think they also want. It sounds like they want an urban situation. They want to put their headquarters in a downtown, which is interesting as well. The Economic Times says its sources say Google presented a mid-range version of the Pixel smartphone in trade meetings held in Malaysia, the UK, and US last month. The device would launch around July or August with a focus on price-sensitive markets like India. Google is also expected to bring the Google Home, Pixelbook, and the forthcoming Pixel 3 to India soon. Hindi was added to Google Assistant last month, so that kind of paves the way for a lot of this. Pixel 3 is expected to arrive in October. And yeah, Hindi and English, you got those on there. You can reach a large part, not 100%, but you can reach a large part of the Indian market. And the Indian market's seen as an important one to move into by a lot of people. So I when you look at the Pixel as a competitor to Samsung or the iPhone, one of the issues is it's available in 8 countries. Samsung's available in 100 plus countries. So if you really want to be in this game for real, you've got to get into more countries worldwide. And it seems like that's the direction Google is moving.
Yeah, and India is such a vital market as well. In a weird way, I don't follow what goes on in the Android platform very closely. And so this is probably an ignorant thing to say, but I was kind of surprised at the fact that it's taken them this long to try to push their sort of defining flagshipy, this is Android done right phone into a middle price point. And the cheapest Pixel right now is $649. That ain't cheap.
Yeah. Well, they were the middle ground with Nexus phones for the longest time.
They were.
And then they dumped that to do the Pixel. It's a very Google thing to do. Like, we'll just throw out everything we did with one project, move to a new project, and then start to replicate the old project inside the new project. So
yeah.
ESPN announced its standalone sports streaming service called ESPN Plus will launch April 12th for $5 a month. The service will include live sports not carried on ESPN's main cable networks, as well as access to ESPN originals. Sports will come with MLB, NHL, MLS, college sports, boxing, PGA golf, tennis, and others.
So it was a surprise to me to see MLB and NHL listed here. I didn't realize they would. Those are expensive rights, especially the MLB, to get. And I didn't realize they would put any such games on this service. This service feels like it's a things that are left over because we bought rights to a lot of stuff and couldn't use it on our main channels. I don't think it'll be a lot of MLB games, to be honest. Those will mostly be put on ESPN and ESPN2. But I don't know. Rob, you were at Disney World recently.
Yes, I do feel I have very personal insights into this because I did spend much of the past weekend at Disney World. And of course, Disney is the owner of ESPN. I'm just going to say it was the talk of the Magic Kingdom, this new service. It was my first time there since I was 5 years old too. So that was kind of interesting.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. They have an ESPN Sports Zone usually outside of those places. So
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is ESPN has lost almost 13 million subscribers over the last 6 years. Now, a lot of that was just people cutting the cable and as by dint of that losing ESPN. And who knows how many of those people were actually watching ESPN to begin with. But this is, they've got to start bobbing and weaving a little bit as cable cutting becomes more and more of a thing. And 13 million subscribers is a lot, however you cut them and however you minimize them.
Yeah, and this is a smart move. I mean, it feels like the kind of product that you have to really be a sports fanatic, a fan of the CFL or college softball to really justify $5 a month to pay for this, which isn't that much, but it's building the groundwork, right? I imagine that this service will continue to grow, and it's an add-on to the ESPN app. You don't get a separate app. It's going to be one of those things where you're logged in with your PlayStation View account or your Comcast account, and then you see something and you're like, oh, I want to watch that. And it's like, hey, great. You want to watch this? Sign up for ESPN Plus, $5 a month, barely miss it, and you'll get access to all this extra stuff. Hey, folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, be sure to subscribe to Daily Tech Headlines at dailytechheadlines.com. Still available on the Amazon Echo, the Google Home, and the Anchor app, as well as a regular podcast. All right, Friday, Tesla posted that the Model X car that was involved in a fatal crash in California had autopilot active during the crash, and that the driver's hands were not on the steering wheel in the 6 seconds prior to the crash, that warnings to put hands on the steering wheel had been delivered a few times prior to the crash. The United States National Transportation Safety Board criticized Tesla for releasing the information. The investigation is still ongoing. They don't like it if people give information partway through. So it's interesting that Tesla made that, because it's not necessarily flattering to Tesla, but I think they were trying to show, hey, this is not what a lot of people think it is. We don't want this to leak out. We want to control the information and tell you, yeah, autopilot was on. No, the guy didn't have his hands on the wheel, and he's supposed to with autopilot. Now, one of the reasons we bring this up, though, is, Rob, you had the chance to talk with Rodney Brooks on the latest episode of After On. Turns out he's an interesting person to talk to about self-driving cars. Why is that?
Yeah, well, Rodney goes back almost to the dawn of two industries, robotics and artificial intelligence. And those are the two things that clearly come together when it comes to self-driving. So just a quick background about the show. So my podcast is called After On, the After On podcast, and it's long, unhurried interviews with thinkers, founders, and scientists like Rodney. And we actually recorded this episode before the two tragedies in self-driving, the one in Phoenix and obviously this very, very recent one in Mountain View. And Rodney, to hit his background again, when he entered the field of robotics, there were literally 3 mobile robots in the entire world. It was back in the 70s when he came out to Stanford to study robotics. And then he headed MIT's AI lab, and he actually studied AI before it was barely even named, and he studied it under the person who named AI. So he's been at that intersection all along. And he is a little bit of a skeptic when it comes to self-driving. He believes it will happen. It will save lots of lives long term, and it'll be very powerful. But he believes that a lot of people in the industry are really extremely optimistic when they talk about the time frame of rolling out different services. And he's gotten a little bit of pushback from people from that. And, probably less so this week with these, two terrible accidents coming right on each other's heels, just, obviously by coincidence. But in our interview, we spent about 10 minutes talking about self-driving, and he made a lot of really kind of intriguing, and to me, points I'd never heard before, supporting his sense of skepticism about how quickly it's going to come out.
We have a range of people in our audience. Some people think that, these sorts of setbacks, you can argue that the Tesla crash may not be an example of a self-driving car. This may be just an example of someone, not paying attention while driving, which can happen if you have auto assist or not on. Certainly the Uber one is without controversy a setback, but we have people who say, oh, that's just a setback, we'll figure it out and we'll move past it and we're going to get these things soon. We have people who write in and say it's all overhyped, it's never going to happen, and you're irresponsible for even talking about it. I think the important thing with Rodney Brooks in your interview is he's not a skeptic on everything.
No,
he is actually more optimistic than some people about certain topics. Why is he thinking that this, what does he think about autonomous cars?
Well, I think he focuses on a lot of things that he believes that a lot of the pundits and even some of the people in the companies are just ignoring. To me, here's one of the really intriguing ones. How often, when you get picked up by a Lyft or an Uber, does that driver technically violate the law? In double parking, in crossing over a double yellow line, whatever it is. I would say when I'm getting picked up, and it tends to be in dense urban cores like New York City and San Francisco, where I spend most of the time, it's a pretty high percentage, it may even be a majority, that the driver technically violates the law. They pull into a bus lane, they do whatever it is. And both the driver and the passenger know that's fine. Probably a passing police officer would know that's fine. These are just the things that we do. Well, how do you tell a self-driving service it's fine to violate the law 40 or 50 times a day? You kind of can't do that, right? And you've got to figure out how you work around that. What happens if a car has to go up a one-way street because a garbage truck or construction has blocked the street, and your only way out is to cross a double yellow line or go wrong way on a one-way street, or wait 6 hours. There's a lot of these cases which actually are confronted by Uber and Lyft drivers probably dozens and dozens of times per day that get a little bit trickier when you start doing things programmatically. And then he talks about the social cues that go on between people, between drivers and pedestrians. And then he came up with, I think he just came up with it in the course of the interview. He said, what about teasing cars? And he came up with this idea of like, hey, I'm a teenager. I'm a little bit bored. I know a self-driving car is never going to run me over for liability reasons, and it's really, really capable. Why don't I get out and pretend I'm jumping in the middle of the road? So car teasing, and a whole bunch of nuances that I hadn't thought of. Now, when we talk about self-driving, we often talk about the so-called trolley problem, which is what happens if the car is going down the road and you have to choose between running over a nun and running over two escaped convicts. We talk about that a great deal. We don't talk about some of these subtleties. And I think that he makes the point, and it's a strong one, that these subtleties, particularly when they tangle with legality, are really going to slow down the rollout. But long term, he certainly believes we're going to get there, just not as quickly as some of us would hope, myself included. I'd like it to be switched on tomorrow.
I've never driven a Tesla in autopilot mode, but I have a friend who goes back and forth from San Francisco to LA because he's from the Bay Area and he lives down here. And a lot of that part of that road is just sort of going straight, not a ton of traffic, whatever, just make sure you don't hit, other trucks. But it's more or less kind of monotonous. And, he's mentioned like, yeah, I have a movie on sometimes, and I'm like, wow, really? I mean, it seems like the drivers, as we get more of this autonomous technology that's even, either an Uber or a Tesla or whatever, and there's just going to be more of it as we try to figure it out. It's like you are encouraged to pay less attention because that's the point, right? The car is smart enough so that you can pay less attention. But then you have stories like this where it's like, well, the driver was warned, put your hands back on the wheel. Well, I don't know what those warnings sound like. I've never heard it myself, but this is like this funny gray area we're in now where it's like, won't it be great that, the cars will just drive us? And then we have these incidents where it's like, doesn't sound like you were paying enough attention. Well, autopilot mode is supposed to make us pay less attention, right? That's the whole point of it. It's just not working that well yet.
Well, Tesla did make the interesting and I think important point, and they're probably going to get a fair amount of flack for this, and they did it carefully, where they said that, we want to point out, and we have, incredible empathy and sympathy for, the victim, family, friends, but there are roughly 4 times as many miles driven by a Tesla in, assist mode. They're 4 times as many miles driven per fatality than normal human drivers. And so let's not lose sight of that, and let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's terrible that this accident happened, but we would argue that for this accident, 3 others were prevented that would have it resulted in a loss of life. And I'm sure that they struggled mightily with, should we say that in this press release so soon after the accident? But what they said, they explicitly put their thinking in the press release. They said, we don't want the lives that can in future be saved by self-driving to be put in jeopardy because people overreact to an incident like this and lose sight of the fact that, arguably by the math, we've saved multiple lives for each one that is tragically lost in this circumstance. So it's going to be, I'm increasingly in agreement with Rodney's points in my interview that it's not going to be as smooth and as fast as we thought, because there are these strange, agonizing, and also, legally complex issues that are going to come up again and again and again as we start rolling this stuff out.
Yeah, and I think that's what's the most interesting about that perspective. And it's not just Rodney's. I've heard this from other people, which is yes, the technology is there, and yes, we can solve all these problems. None of these are killers. Even weather, even winter driving, none of these are killers. But we will have to solve them slower than people are expecting, because they're not as easily solved as the optimists would like to imply. So, and I think the legality thing is a good one. I can think of a million ways we could try to solve that. Certainly machine learning is capable of learning when to fudge things, but then it's the liability part. Well, okay, if we've taught machine learning when to fudge things, when do we punish it for fudging things wrong? We have laws for a reason, right? Or maybe we adapt the laws. Maybe we have to change the laws to be more sensible, because we've we're like, we've let it slide because we all figured out how to work it out. But now that we have automated systems, we need to come up with a more workable system of laws that doesn't require fudging. But all of that stuff takes time. Anytime you're talking about anything involving laws, it's going to take a lot of time. And that is a bigger impedance to the development of autonomous cars, I think, than the technology itself.
And it's interesting to hear that coming from Rodney, because he's certainly no Luddite. I mean, this is the person who invented the Roomba. He invented the PackBot, which, 6,500 of them deployed in Afghanistan and Iraq, diffusing all those IEDs. He is no cringing, future-fearing Luddite by any stretch of the imagination. So he did this great blog post on January 1st where he made dated predictions of lots of things. About a third or maybe a quarter of them were pertaining to self-driving cars. And I think it's great that he has the courage to go out and put dates on his predictions and hold himself to account and be put in a position where he will either be clearly right or clearly wrong. And it is interesting getting these cautionary notes from somebody who is very much a futurist and whose vision has had a lot to do with the fact that we've gotten to this point already.
Yeah. Rodney Brooks thinks we'll have a labor shortage. That the robots won't take our jobs. So go listen to After On to find out a little more about that perspective. And thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com and facebook.com/groups/dailytechnewsshow.
Shall we go across the pond? Let's check in across the great wide Atlantic Ocean, otherwise the pond, to find out what's been happening in the UK on text message.
Hey, thanks, guys. This week we have taken a British look on the latest in the Facebook data scandal, specifically discussing the fact that Mark Zuckerberg has said he is not going to appear before a UK committee of lawmakers to give evidence. And this has been seen as a very, very bad PR move in Britain, to say the least. We've also got some discussion around how Europe is going to potentially dump 300,000 UK-owned .eu domains once we leave the European Union. All that and more at techpodcast.uk.
Yes. There's so many things falling out of Brexit where the EU is like, well, if we don't fix this, we're just going to take out you because only people who live in the EU can have .eu. So unless you want to figure that out, I'm certain some of them will be figured out, but I wonder. So check out Tech's message if you'd like to know more.
Thanks, Nate Langston, and thanks to Rob Reid. Rob, we were talking about After On. What is on the next episode so people can look forward to what's coming up?
Yeah, actually, the next episode goes up tomorrow. So depending on when people see this episode of DTNS, it may already be up. So Rodney Brooks is episode 23. We talked about that. The next episode is going to be a really long interview with George Church, who is widely considered to be the leading bioengineer and probably the top person worldwide in genomics today. He is a co-inventor of CRISPR. His work on the Human Genome Project actually predated the official start of that project. And he is one of the most widely cited people and the co-founder of 22 startups, all this while running a very busy and very high-profile academic lab at Harvard. He and I talk all about what's happening in synthetic biology. We go through a series of definitions that I think will help people frame synthetic biology better in their minds and really contextualize this amazing thing that George helped invent called CRISPR. And we talk about a lot of other really cool things. And I think that life is about to get much more interesting very quickly due to SynBio, a lot quicker than I thought going into the interview. So that will be up starting tomorrow as we sit here, but perhaps today when you, dear listener, are listening, if you are in fact listening on Tuesday instead of Monday.
Time travel, man. Just that's a problem with everything.
Time shifting.
Thank you, patrons. It is the second of the month, which means some of you are still actually having your pledges processed. And we thank every single one of you who keeps this show running. We got 7 more patrons than last month. So huge thanks to you for that. I want to keep it going to get at least one more next month. So don't cancel unless you have to. We understand financial difficulties happen, but we've got all kinds of good things coming this month, including a roundtable with Amber Mack and Jen Cutter at the end of the month. So check out all the new perks are posted up at patreon.com/DTNS.
Patrons, non-patrons, and everybody in between, we love to get your feedback, questions, comments, ideas, ideas, all of it. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 2030 UTC. And you can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live.
Back tomorrow with our guest, Lamar Wilson. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
And I know a lot of you guys appreciate the show notes, the expanded show notes that are more than just the Google Doc. Big thanks to Ethan Kane, who's back doing that. He just finished today's right now. Like the show wasn't even over. He was done with the show notes. It's amazing.
He lives in the future.
He does. Oh my gosh. More time travel. Time travel's the new vampires. Everything.
So I got a question about Patreon because I'm brand new to it myself. Is the second of the month when people roll off if they've turned off their credit card or whatever it is? Like, does it all happen on one day?
It's it's the first. It's just sort of every month.
It starts on the first, and for one as large as us, it usually takes a few days for everything to get processed. Usually, it's all done by the 5th.
Okay, because that's interesting. Because I went into yesterday the 1st. With 204 patrons, and I was feeling pretty good about it. Just started about a month ago.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then it rolled back. I started back in February. So, I mean, I am experiencing, whatever drives this. And then I looked, I'm like, oh my God, I'm down to 202.
I see why you're asking this.
I went backward, but now I'm up to 207. So
never
look. Today.
Never look at your Patreon numbers between the 1st and the 5th. It will drive you crazy.
Well, they dipped and then they went back up again. But
because
overall, I'm up 170 since ago, so I'm okay with that.
They're an estimate of what they think you'll have at the end of the month. And on the 1st of the month, when it's going through and like, oh, that credit card didn't process. Well, hold on, we need to reprocess it. That number fluctuates wildly.
Got it.
Because it's dealing with all of this change. And then by the 5th, they've reprocessed credit cards that work, and they found which ones are like, this one just isn't working, and then it sort of levels out.
Well, good. Well, I did see the dip, and I feel the fact that I'm clawing my way past the dip back to an all-time high. I feel good about that. But I was a little sad yesterday when I saw myself going backward, and I was afraid I was going to see that every day, but it's only a monthly.
Right.
Always expect a dip on the 1st. Yeah. Because that's just the way the system works when it's going through and like, oh, that didn't work. That didn't work. That didn't work. And so it artificially drops.
Thank you for the pro tip.
Yeah. No, I remember the first time that happened, I was like, oh my God, we're losing everybody.
They hate my show.
They hate my show.
Well, it's...
I mean, they do hate my show, but that wasn't...
Sometimes people drop off for reasons that are not credit card oriented. However...
Well, it is interesting because I figured that everybody would just be on their own 30-day cycle. That's how it used to be when we were running Rhapsody, is like, you'd have some people that build on the 17th and some on the 21st.
Funny.
And so when it went backward yesterday, I was like, oh my God, this is what happens when you've got more than, a couple hundred patrons. This is going to happen every day. Maybe I've peaked. I was talking to Morgan. I was like, honey, I think I've peaked.
No, that's
all. Every single day. And for the first time, I've gotten to the point where I had what is non-euphemistically and without any kind of irony called in business negative growth, also known as shrinkage. But okay, so I only have to do this once a week. That's great news. And like I said, I've already clawed my way out of that hole. And I'll remember this. In fact, I'm going to put a reminder in my calendar to not freak out on May 1st.
Just don't look between the 1st and the 5th.
I'll put a reminder, don't look at Patreon for 5 days.
Or just, don't take those numbers seriously until the 5th. That's when they shake out. Funny story. They wanted to move to a billing system like you're talking about, where you just get charged the moment you pledge and you're on 30-day cycle. And that caused the whole fiasco in December that they then backed off of.
What was that? I don't remember that.
So in December, Patreon said, we're going to change it to this rolling 30-month thing. Problem is, because of that, when we bill, it's going to cost more, because right now we can put all of your things through as one transaction. And there's certain processing fees that are per transaction. So if we're doing it everybody at a different date, you're going to have more transactions. So creators, to make sure that you don't have to pay that, we're going to have that processing fee paid by the supporter, because the supporter will barely notice it because it's a small percentage. Well,
yeah, but it's not a round number anymore. They'll notice it in a heartbeat.
Also,
wait, I pledged $5. What am I getting charged? $5.21. That would
the supporters definitely noticed it, because a lot of them say, well, wait a minute, I'm supporting 20 different people. And now I'm going to have, you just raised, you only raised me, 5 cents, but it was across, 5 cents per dollar across 30 different supporters. Some of them I'm supporting at $5. You just, and so people started canceling their pledges because they couldn't support as many people, and they backed off. That's why.
Wow. Fiasco, huh? That's a good name for it.
Yeah. I don't remember who came up with that. Yeah. It's an apt description, though.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
Show title.
I wanted to go autonomous road rage and car teasing.
Car teasing, I think it's a phrase that Roddy just came up with when we were talking, and it just tickles me. But I'm obviously biased, so I shouldn't have a vote in this.
Oh no, it's great. I love it. What do you think, Sarah?
Sure. Car teasing.
It's the new cow tipping, isn't it? Or maybe car teasing : the new cow tipping ?
My only reservation is that it it's like we were discussing an incident where somebody died.
I see.
True.
How about slowing down self-driving?
Very apt.
Okay, we'll do that.
Descriptive.
All right. Duplicato.
Yeah, it is tricky when you've got fatalities involved. The whimsical names become less funny.
Again?
Great.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
You
you're
must
back.
have dropped out. You're back, though. Or are you?
Can we?
I'm not looking, guys.
Luckily, this didn't happen during.
Can help Rob out. I can't. I'm not.
Rob, so I still can't hear you, Rob.
Am I audible?
Now I can
Now
hear
you
you.
are.
Don't
You're
touch
back.
anything you were just touching. Oh wait, now I can't hear you.
Okay, I was holding it. I'm holding the plug into the mic. This blue icicle thing is not all that it's cracked up to be. Okay, I'm going to let go of it now. Let's see if I go mute. You can still hear me, right? Boom.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, are you using an XLR cable between the icicle and the mic?
Yeah, I'm using there's an XLR. The icicle is kind of an XLR adapter that goes to USB, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the icicle itself is you plug a mic into an XLR, and what I've been touching at the bottom of it is just sort of the USB cable that connects the icicle to my Mac. So maybe I just should replace that cable and quit blaming Blue Icicle and the good people there.
But I think what Roger was asking is there a cable between your mic and the icicle?
No.
I'm wondering if maybe you want, because it sounds like you're having a cable strain issue where it's pulling on
The
it.
cable's pretty loose over here. It's a couple feet of slack. But we got through the episode, and I'll look at it.
There's no issue during the show.
More significantly, I'll have Morgan look at it because she's much smarter about all things technical than I am.
Well, tell Morgan that my experience with the icicle is it is a little delicate.
Yeah.
So sometimes that plasticky connection thing starts to get a little wonky, and using a cable between the mic and the icicle will obviate that, because the mic itself can strain it more than the cable.
Right. Well, check out when it goes up tomorrow, check out the George Church episode. I think all of you guys will be, I was blown away by some of the things that he has in a 5-year time frame. And I came out of that interview, this is a couple of weeks ago, kind of walking on air. feeling like there's some really amazing stuff that's around the corner. And George is a very understated. There's not a drop of P.T. Barnum's blood in him.
Right. He's not a
He's a
hype
pretty
machine.
humble, understated guy.
Uh-huh.
And I ran it by another genomicist. Basically, he and I did some sort of color commentary on it in our extra for patrons thing. And this guy's like, yeah, no, it's George is the guy. And his predictions have had a habit of being conservative over the past 25 years that he's been a prominent person on the scene. So the organ shortage may end. Xenotransplantation, pig organs into humans, there's all kinds of cool stuff coming. Anyway, I'm blathering now, obviously.
Okay, so one of the after on episodes when I was doing them with you for the book that I was so excited about was involving the programmable DNA and all of that.
Yep.
So I'm pretty excited to hear more along these lines.
And Andy was one of the people. Andy Hessel, that episode, I think was my 4th episode. He was one of the people who introduced me to George, and then a later guest also did. And in the world of genomics, I mean, getting George, it's really strange. It's like there's no other field that I know of where if you ask like, hey, who's the top person in the field? Normally you'll hear, well, there isn't one. There's these 5 or 6 people, right? Or 5 or 6 names will come up. In genomics, in synthetic biology, it is literally just unanimity. It's always, well, there's George Church. And then it's almost like
the first one,
Michael Jackson, like Michael Jordan with basketball in the 80s.
Right.
It's just this unanimity that you don't get anywhere else. So it was pretty darn exciting. We sat down for over 2 hours in like end of days weather in Boston on a Friday afternoon. So I was expecting him to say, dude, I got 5 minutes and hop. But we really, really spent a great deal of time. And we structured the conversation in a way to really be very explanatory about, how is genetic sequencing different from editing, different from synthesis, different from assembly. And now that we've got all these baseline terms together, let's go into the sort of the wild blue yonder of the near future and things that are going to be potentially very, very transformative for, I think, all human society in the next 5 to 10 years. So anyway, that was fun.
From the guy who brought you CRISPR. I mean, not the only guy, right? But still, yeah.
He basically is the guy who brought us CRISPR. I mean, there are a lot of names on the patents, as there should be, but he did the first work. He did the first work and probably the most influential work.
Well, I just got a response from this dog fostering organization that I was. Yeah, I'm not ready to get a dog, but I like the idea of being part of, helping the system work better. And they just got back to me and said, "Ooh, got your application. Sounds really good. Let's talk."
Cool.
I don't know
which one it is, but
it's Marley's Mutts.
Okay.
Marley's Mutts is they're in particular, I know some folks who work with incarcerated people, and one of the programs, not the only one, but one of the programs with them is that certain dogs are placed with, a good match, and somebody who's in jail helps train them and get them to be more comfortable with people, and it's a temporary situation, but they've got a really great Instagram page, and I'm just like looking at it crying one day, like I really want to volunteer with these people. They seem like such angels, so maybe I will.
That's very cool. Yeah, it's hard
so.
for us to foster dogs because we want to always keep them.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
it takes a special kind of person, and they exist to do it on the rotating basis.
Well, I mean, and I'm not totally sure. It's like it would depend on the dog, of course, but it's like I already have animals. I'm not necessarily, the idea isn't just to like get a bunch of dog crates in here and like go nuts, but to be able to be part of, placing them and just hanging out with them. And I worked at the SPCA in San Francisco years ago, and eventually I got busy and I couldn't do it anymore on the days that I wanted to, but it was very rewarding. Just makes you feel good.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Rob, your icicle.
You just went mute. You muted yourself in Google.
No,
Yeah,
Google
I
probably
see.
auto muted him when it noticed that his mic wasn't
Mm.
working properly. That happens. So you'll need to unmute and hang out there, and then no. There.
There you are. You're back. Yeah. See, it has that telltale crackle whenever you connect
Yeah, there's a
again. That
short.
really sounds cable based.
The other
Cable-based.
the other solution is to buy a Shure version of
Sure,
this.
Michael. This is a Shure
No,
mic.
there's a Shure adapter. That's like
instead
the
of Blue
icicle.
Like,
And
move on
it's
to
a-
the Blue Icicle already. It's
It's a little more expensive, but it's a little more durable.
Could you send me a link? Because I'm going
Yeah.
to do that. I think it's time now. And Sterling, the thing I asked, I thought I was asking you, but I was just asking Ashby the dog because I was on mute. Does this thing, do they literally send dogs into the prisons to be trained?
Yes.
Really? So is
Yeah.
it minimum security? Like, I can't imagine all prisons. I was just at San Quentin actually last week, literally doing a visit with Last Mile, which is one of these groups that works with incarcerated folks. And I couldn't imagine dogs at San Quentin. So is it lower security prisons or?
Well, I'm going to have to get back to you on that. But yes,
Yeah.
I'm under the impression that these are prisons where it's like they've got these whole kind of like, it's like, it almost looks like, I don't know.
School.
And they just, they've got like little things, for the dogs to jump over. And, the whole thing is
Training. That's cool.
It's training. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, not everybody who's, in prison for whatever reason is going to be a good match for this sort of thing. And I don't know that much about it, but I looked at enough of the photos where I was like, wow, if this is something it's something I could do in LA that was, not super time prohibitive or whatever. I'd like to know more. So,
Can you guys see Ashby again? We got Ashby.
Hi, Ashby.
ow, buddy,
Aw, what a sweetheart.
That's our critter.
just good
Ashby
ears.
the dog. So before we shut down the stream, I want to remind folks that I have a follow-up to Pilot X funding on Inkshares right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's called Trigor, Trigor. And we're just shy of 40% funded. You could be the person who pushes it past the 40% mark.
How does Inkshare work? I don't even know of this. Is it like a Kickstarter for books?
Inkshares is what I did for Pilot X, and it's exactly that. If we get 750 pre-orders, it gets published. So Inkshares works like a normal publisher everywhere except the slush read. What the editors and slush readers would normally do is done by the crowd. And then once it gets to 750 pre-orders, then it goes to a professional editor and gets a marketing plan and the whole ball of wax. So
Very cool.
yeah. So you can go to inkshares.com, search for Trigor, just search for my name, and take a look. There's a couple sample chapters up there as well. And I know a bunch of you guys read Pilot X. So if you liked that and you would like more, inkshares.com. Rob, thanks again for joining us, man. That was a really good conversation.
Thank you, as always, for having me. I'm always delighted to be on this show, and it's very kind of you to put me and my work in front of your vastly larger audience. It's very, very cool. I really appreciate it.
It's easy when you have smart people coming on talking about interesting things.
Yeah, I get good guests. I've been very blessed in that regard.
No, I meant you coming on our
Oh,
show.
me.
But yes, you
Oh,
do the
me.
same thing on your show. too.
I just come in with the transitive property of smartness of the guests who have hopefully rubbed
All right.
off some of their wisdom.
Everyone will hug right now, and then I'll stop the stream.
All right. Thanks, Roger.
All right. See you guys tomorrow.
See y'all.